Here's the training objectives. Competitors shall prepare weld joints, make tack welds, and weld fillet joint with FCAW and GMAW process. Task: to stack two 12mm specimens in a T-shape and fillet joint with FCAW and GMAW. Objective: to be able to weld given material with root, fill, and cap passes. Goals: to strengthen weld joint preparation skills and welding skills. To make sound welds without any defects such as undercut, porosity, and slag inclusion. Materials: use a plate of 12mm thick, 250mm by 100mm, and one 250mm by 100mm. In this task, different welding techniques are performed depending on the welding posture. In the 2F horizontal position, you will use FCAW, and in the 3F vertical position, you will use GMAW. For welding rods, FCAW uses K-71T 1.2mm, and GMAW uses KC28 1.2mm. 100% carbon dioxide gas is used as the protective gas. Main focus of the task. Base materials are two different sizes of steel plates with 12mm thickness. Don't confuse the location of each plate by cross-checking with the drawing. Do not work on the pre-machined surface on the plates for fillet joint. If you do, you will lose marks. Removal of shop primer on overall weld face is required prior to tack welding. While tack welding, plates shall be put together tightly to maintain zero root gap. It is important to check the angle between two plates, with a square gauge to maintain 90 degrees between two plates prior to tack welding. 3 tack welds shall be made for fillet joints. 1 tack will be located the opposite side of welding location, and 2 tacks will be located on both edge of plates. The tack welding length on the opposite side of the welding location shall not be over 25 millimeters. Fillet size shall be limited to 10 to 12 millimeters. Mark guide length with 10 millimeter thick plate and a marker for fillet size. Shielding gas flow rate shall be maintained at 15 to 20 liters per minute. For shielding gas, mixed gas, argon 80% and carbon dioxide 20%, or 100% carbon dioxide gas can be used. To prevent slag inclusions, clean after welding of each pass and grind all start-stop points. Use adequate welding current since higher welding current may cause undercut. For FCAW, welding current is at 100 to 140 ampere, 16 to 22 volt. For GMAW, welding current is at 100 to 140 ampere, 16 to 22 volt. Root pass and cap pass should have a stop-start point, hold point, at the center of welds. Prior to welding, mark the location for the stop-start. Please check the preparations and tools for this training. Precautions. The part where two plates contact has been pre-machined. You will lose the mark if you machine this part additionally. Plates for fillet joint coated with shop primer to prevent oxidation. To prevent any welding defects, shop primer on weld joints need to be removed. Check if a root gap for fillet joint gets wider when two plates are put together. Be careful, since if there is any root gaps, it may cause slag inclusions or incomplete penetration. After fixing the plates, check if two plates make a right angle with a square gauge. For fillet welding, stop-starts shall be made for root and cap pass according to competition rule. Prior to welding, mark the locations for the stop-starts. Fillet welding has 3 points in total at the back of the weld line and at both edges of the base material. The length of the temporary welding at the back of the welding line should not exceed 25 millimeters. The most critical point for fillet root pass welding is the proper penetration of joint root.
FCAW로 용접할 때는 위빙을 하지 않고 일직선으로 용접하여 모서리 부분을 충분히 녹여줘야 합니다.
FCAW process generates lots of spatters because the higher welding current is used. It is recommended to remove spatters after the completion of each pass welding. Otherwise, spatters will make it difficult to identify fillet marking line. Fillet size shall be maintained up to marked guideline. If the fillet welding size remains even after the welding is complete, a point will be deducted due to the shortage of the length. Please check what you are going to perform on this task. Preparation of base material weld joints. Measure the size of plates. Measure the plate size and confirm the assembly location of the plates as the size of the bottom and vertical plates are different. First, coated shop primer or oxide layer on weld joints shall be removed. The coated layer is also referred to as a shop primer and serves to prevent the oxidation of plates. Remove any contaminant and shop primer with a grinder fitted with 2 T-disc. The part where two plates contact has been pre-machined. You will lose the mark if you machine this part additionally. Remove contaminant only with a cup brush. Assemble plates as T-connection. Check if the shop primer on weld joint completely removed and a root gap for fillet joint gets wider when two plates are put together. The plates shall contact tightly without any gap. FCAW tack welding. Measure the material size. Fit up the plate of 125 mm width at the bottom and 100 mm width at vertical position. Then assemble the plate as T-connection. For T-joint, vertical plate shall be located 25 mm inside from the edge of the bottom plate according to drawing. Check the location of vertical plate, whether it locates 25 mm inside from the plate edge with a steel ruler. Fix the vertical plate with a magnetic base after checking the location. Check the location of vertical plate once again, whether it locates 25 mm inside from the plate edge with a steel ruler. If required, adjust the plate location by hitting lightly with a hammer. Fix the two plates tightly without any gap with a vertical magnetic base. If there are any gaps between plates, it could cause slag inclusions or incomplete penetration. After fixing the plates, confirm the angle between two plates maintained 90 degrees with a square. Then, remove the magnetic base. 1-point temporary welding is applied to the back of the welding line. The welder is welding with FCAW process. Length of tack weld on the other side of weld joint shall not be over 25 millimeters. The number of tack welds for fillet joint is 3, including 1 for other side of weld joint and 2 for edge of plates. Make 1 tack weld at each edge of the plate. Check the condition of tack welds and confirm whether the angle of the two base materials is maintained at a right angle using a right angle ruler. Not only for one location, but it should also be checked from several locations, including start and finish point. FCAW root pass. Mark the fillet guideline by using 10 mm thick plate. Make the clear line by marking couple of times, since while welding the marking line could be invisible. Mark fillet guideline at 10 mm location on both vertical plate and bottom plate. For welding, complete weld up to the marked guideline. If the fillet welding size line is C after welding, it means that the bead has not been sufficiently accumulated, and it is insufficient size of fillet weld in. For fillet welding, a stop-start shall be made for the root and cap pass according to the competition rule. The rod joint should be made within the rod joint section of 75 mm with margins on both sides based on the center of the plate. For this reason, it's recommended to mark the location for a stop-start in advance. The welder is welding in horizontal position with FCAW process. For FCAW process, weld with stringer beads without weaving. Allow the time to fuse the corner sufficiently and make stringer bead, since it is hard to penetrate the corner with weaving technique. When the welding puddle reaches to a marked stop-start location, stop welding. Make sharp U-profile groove on bead with a grinder to make a bead connection, stop-start. For a stop-start welding, beads connection, start the arc from approximately 5 to 10 mm back from finished location to make a smooth transition of welding beads and reduce the chance of defects. For root pass, the joint root fusion is the most critical part. For the end part of plate, make 2 or 3 spot welds by keeping a short arc length. When root pass welding completed, remove slag with a chipping hammer and clean up contaminant with a cup brush. Remove the spatters on weld surface with a hammer and a chisel. Remaining spatters on the plate make it difficult to identify a fillet guideline. It is recommended to remove spatter after welding of each passes. FCAW cap pass. For horizontal position, split the weld runs and make 2 passes for cap layer. If a stop-start is required for cap pass, make a stop-start on the final pass. The most critical point for cap pass welding is to make required weld size. Weld straightly aligning with a fillet guideline on the bottom plate. For fillet welding, welding shall be completed within minimum 2 passes or maximum 3 passes. Remove slag on welds with a chipping hammer. To prevent slag inclusions for the next pass, clean up contaminant with a cup brush. To make a stop-start for a final pass welding, mark the location of stop-start. Check the drawing carefully for each completion because the requirement for stop-start could be changed for each competition. FCAW second cap pass. Fill the bead up to the upper line of each fillet welding size. Generally, the weaving technique is not used for the horizontal position. But when bigger fillet size is required, the weaving technique needs to be applied. For fillet welding, making a required fillet weld size is important than applying the weaving technique. Competitors will decide whether weaving technique to be applied or not, depending on their works, since undersize of fillet weld will cause losing marks when the marking process. When welding puddle reaches to the fillet guide line of stop-start, stop welding and remove slag on beads. Make U-shaped groove with a grinder fitted with 2 T-disc for bead connections. Carefully make U-shaped groove for bead connection, only since too many grinding works makes lots of grinding marks and it is difficult to remove. For a stop-start welding, beads connection, start the arc from approximately 5 to 10 millimeters behind from finished location to make smooth transition of welding beads and to prevent welding defects. To prevent overflow of welding at the end point, make 2 or 3 spot welds. Remove slag with a chipping hammer and clean up contaminant with a cup brush for the completed coupon. GMAW tack welding. Measure the material size and confirm the bottom plate and vertical plate. Fit up the plates as T-connection and fix the vertical plate with a magnetic base. Check the location of vertical plate, whether it locates 25 millimeters inside from the plate edge with a steel ruler. Fix 2 plates tightly with any gaps securely with a vertical magnetic base. Remove a magnetic base and make 1 tack weld on the opposite side of weld joints. Length of tack weld on the other side of weld joint shall not over 25 millimeters. Make 1 tack weld for each edge of the plate. Mark the fillet guideline by using 10 millimeter thick plate. Make the clear line by marking couple of times, since while welding the marking line could be invisible. Mark fillet guideline at 10 millimeter location on both vertical plate and bottom plate. For fillet welding, a stop-start shall be made for the root and cap pass according to competition rule. Therefore, it is recommended to mark the location of a stop-start at 125 millimeter location. GMAW Vertical Position Root Pass. Keep work angle at 90 degrees and travel angle at 75 to 85 degrees. Proceed welding by keeping a short arc length and narrow bead width. When the welding puddle reaches to a marked stop-start location, stop welding. Make sharp U-profile groove on bead with a grinder to make a bead connection, stop-start. The reason for shaping with a grinder. For smooth transition between the weldment of tack welding and main welding. For a stop-start welding, beads connection, Start the arc from approximately 5 to 10 millimeters back from finished location to make smooth transition of welding beads and reduce the chance of defects. For root pass, the joint root fusion is the most critical part. Keep the arc length short at the end and finish with spot weld. When root pass welding completed, clean up contaminant with a cup brush. GMAW Vertical Position Cap Pass. The welder is welding in vertical position. Deposit welding bead completely up to the marked guide line with big weave pattern. The tip of wire should pause at locations of each edge and travel slowly within a zigzag weave pattern. When the welding puddle reaches to a stop-start marking location, stop welding. Make sharp U-profile groove on bead by grinding to make a bead connection, stop-start. Carefully make U-shaped groove for bead connection only since too many grinding works makes lots of grinding marks, and it is difficult to remove. For a stop-start welding, beads connection, start the arc from approximately 5 to 10 millimeters back from finished location to make smooth transition of welding beads and reduce the chance of defects. To prevent overflow of welding at the finish point, make 2 or 3 spot welds. Remove slag and clean up contaminant with a cup brush for the completed coupon. Perform visual inspection to check any deformation or welding defects. Please check the key points of the tasks you have done this time. So far, we have looked at the construction of FCAW and GMAW for 12mm fillet welding. Thank you for your hard work.